Hello everyone. A very warm welcome to a new episode of Emergence of Bangladesh. In this video, we will talk about the background and aftermath of a historic revolt of Indians, which they fought against the oppressive British colonial rule. This resistance was termed as a sepoy mutiny by the British colonizer from their colonial perspective. On the contrary, Indian nationalists defined this movement as their first war of independence. So it carries huge importance in the history of India as well as in the history of India itself. So this is going to be a very important episode in your lesson. This resistance did not happen overnight. Rather, it was instigated by a series of latent grievances of the people against the British rule, which ultimately turned into a very, very powerful revolt and shook the foundation of British colonial government. This war put an end to the rule of British East India Company and brought India under the British Crown. This short introduction might have already made you very curious about knowing the history of this movement, right? So let's begin with that curiosity.
Unlike other military or civil uprising, this revolt of 1857 was unique as it was more coordinated and well organized. Wide range of discrimination that created dissatisfaction among the army pushed Indian soldiers to this major disobedience and upsurge. General Service Enlistment Act of 1856 compelled sepoys or soldiers to oblige the posting abroad including in Burma. Reforms undertaken within army provided privileges to soldiers from upper caste such as respect to their dietary and travel restrictions, but this act erased those and other privileges and made a huge disparity between English soldiers and the officers and the soldiers of the Indian origin. On the other hand, English officers often showed distrust and hatred towards their Indian soldiers. Furthermore, Indian soldiers used to get lower salaries and very few opportunities of promotion in comparison to the English soldiers and officers. Discrimination and suffering from economic and social unease within the army were coupled with attack on native beliefs and practices. Christian missionaries and liberal social legal reforms already generated fear and anxiety that the alien rulers are trying to destroy religious faith of the people. The issue of the introduction of cartridges for the Enfield rifle sparked and fueled the revolt at maximum. The cartridges, which had to be beaten off before loading, were rumored to have smeared with cow and pig fat. Both of these are considered to be polluting to the Hindu and Muslim community respectively. It was widely seen as a conspiracy to pollute Indians religiously, to force them to get converted into Christianity. Soldiers refused to load the new rifle, which eventually threw them to imprisonment. This revolt began with a military mutiny started by a sepoy named Mongol Pandey in Barakpur in Bengal. He refused to use the cartridges and opened fire at European officers. Although it was the beginning point of the revolt, Meerut's army gave the full-scale blow to the British rulers. The entire regiment of Meerut revolted and they began their rebellion by killing their European officers. Soon after, they had been joined by armies from different regiments in various areas. Within a few months, so-called Sepoy Mutiny spread to the entire territory between Delhi and Bihar and caused a near collapse of company rule in large parts of the northern and central India. The key strategies of the rebels were set by minute examples of killing British officers and other Europeans, breaking the prisons and releasing the prisoners, burning government offices, and so forth. Both Hindu and Muslim soldiers were involved in the rebellion. Thereafter, people weighted their effort on a mass movement joining their brothers in the army. One of the most notable figures of this revolt was Rani Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi. She joined other leaders of the rebels and heroically fought against British until they killed her in a battle. The revolt sparked the violent upsurge throughout the India, marking North India as the epicenter. The revolutionaries took control of Delhi and reinstated the Mughal emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar as the absolute authority. At a point, British control over the Indian territories was almost lost. The British were notorious player when it comes to subjugate the Indian people. Heinously, the British colonial government brutally crushed the movement and turned India into a slaughterhouse of revolutionaries. They arrested and exiled the last Mughal emperor to Burma, the current-day Myanmar. Here you can see Bahadur Shah Park in Dhaka. Although suppressed, this struggle brought a revolutionary change in the Indian minds for further freedom struggles. The result of this great revolt was huge, both on Indians and British. The British like-minded term so-called Sepoy Mutiny shook the rule of wealth-hungry British East India Company. Aftermath of the so-called Sepoy Mutiny in 1857, East India Company rule was abolished and British Crown took over the rule of colonial India in 1858. Queen Victoria became the Empress of British India. It seems that the power handed over from a monster to a bigger one. As India is very important for both the economy and defense, there was no option for Britain to loosen the iron fist grip on the colony. The switch of power meant that instead of Governor General, India would be ruled under a Crown Viceroy. In England, the post of Secretary of State for India was created and entrusted to make policies for Indian territory.
In this video, we have tried to discuss the causes and a brief summary of the First War of Independence. Along with that, it also has shaded light on the results and impacts of this resistance. Even though this movement did not immediately succeed, but in the long run, it became an example and inspiration for subsequent movement, and it also worked as the precursor of Indian nationalism. Through that motivation, Indians kept on fighting against the colonial ruler, and ultimately, after 100 years, they got their independence, and the birth of India and Pakistan happened in 1947. That's all for this part. Thank you so much for watching.